So welcome back to another training video with SVS Countermeasures Training on Checkpoint X-ray systems. This one's going to be a little bit more technical. We're actually going to start getting into menus, but what we're going to talk about is TIP or threat imaging projection. So some of you actually know what this is because you use it every day. Some of the bomb tech guys, unless they work in the aviation security field, they probably have no idea what this is. So we'll kind of explain to you what TIP is, and we'll actually give you a demonstration of actually how it works. So TIP is, again, threat imaging projection, and what it does is it evaluates the operator who's working on the X-ray machine live, actually at a live checkpoint when real bags are going through, by projecting a fake threat into that bag. It could be either a gun, knife, or an IED. Typically, all of the threat libraries that are loaded into the system are going to come in three basic categories: guns, knives, IEDs, and some will have another category of other. It's kind of the standard across the board in regards to what they use for threat libraries. And again, in the menus, we're going to show you the different things you can do with the threat imaging threat projection software, and it's the same no matter which vendor you go to. You go on a Rapidscan system, Astrophysics system, anybody's system, they're all set up basically the same when it comes to TIP, because this was an aviation generated request or requirement, and it's pretty much a standard for evaluating checkpoint screeners or operators on X-ray as far as their proficiency at identifying different types of threats. Now, I am not a big fan of TIP. Okay, there's a lot of things with TIP that I think are that need to be fixed, that have to make it better and to improve it to make it more realistic. And one of the things I challenge you to do if you're running a program and you're using TIP as an evaluation process, and if you have also a covert testing program or penetration testing program, the key indicator that you've got a problem, okay, is that if your TIP scores are really high, but the penetration testing program scores are really low, you've got a problem, okay? And we'll go into a little bit about this and explain why that's happening, but typically TIP is not an accurate evaluation of a screener's performance, and there's a multitude of reasons on why that's happening. All right, so let's demonstrate for you here real quick exactly how it works. I'm going to have to log out with what I was in. It only operates on the Smiths when you're in the user level. So I'm just going to run a bag through, and the system is going to go into its libraries of where these threats are stored. And literally all it is they've taken a gun, knife, or IED, ran it through the system in different positions on the belt and different orientations by itself, and then captured that image and put it into this threat library for guns, knives, and bombs. And then what happens is when a person's bag goes through, there's a way you set it up on the frequency that they'll actually see these tips, and I've got it set up for like every bag that goes through is going to get a tip. They set it up to where it's going to project that threat inside the bag, and we'll show you that whole process. All right, so we'll go ahead and turn the belt on. We'll run this bag through the system, and we should get a projection right away. And we do. There's a knife right there inside this bag, and now it's counting down because there's a timer that gives you a certain amount of time that you have to make a decision on whether you see a threat here or not. We're going to let it count down, and it's going to gig me because I did not make a decision on whether there was a threat in this bag or not before the timer actually counted down. All right? So now it's telling me that there's I did not identify a fictional knife threat inside this bag, and it's highlighted it in this yellow and black highlight, and it's staying up on the screen so I can sit there and look at it and then learn as an operator what I missed, so next time I potentially learn from this, and then I can go back and next time potentially catch it. Now you see after a certain amount of time this actually goes away. Now all of this is adjustable in the settings, and if you use the default settings that these systems come in, they suck, okay? They do not leave that image up there for any amount of time for your operator to learn, so all of these settings need to be adjusted. Now I've done it on this one to make it more conducive to a learning process, okay? Because just because somebody misses something, we don't want to leave it at that. We want to provide them the opportunity at that moment in time that they can see what they missed for a long enough time that they can visually imprint it in their head and actually remember it and learn from their actual mistake. The way the system's set up in the default, there's no time whatsoever for them to see it. It's kind of like, what? It's that fast that it goes through the system. Also, they've got it set up with a default timer of 3 seconds. Guys, that's just absolute bullcrap. Now, I know you guys want the lines to go fast, but the reality is it takes time to screen a bag. The more clutter, the more time it's going to take. All right, so 3 seconds is not enough time to do that. Now, it does give the operator additional time based on them pushing any of the image keys or hitting the stop belt, whatever, which is conducive to doing your job. So as long as they're pushing the button, they will get more time on top of that 3 seconds. And again, that is also adjustable in the menu. So we'll go through and show you the different ones. Now this one, we did it to where I missed it, and you got to see what happened. All right, and it gave you that indicator down at the bottom. So this time, we're going to do it again, but I'm going to be a little bit more ready to make a decision, okay? So wow, I see a gun inside there, and up on the top, the number 1 key and the function key is got a X with a bag and a question mark. This is called the marked bag key. Now most people who run aviation security do not use this button. They'll use the P3 button on their system or a priority key, one of the 3 priority keys, as their marked bag key. I don't like this because it takes away one of your imaging keys or ability to have an additional imaging key on those priority keys. There's already a button there. Why not use it, okay? Instead of actually taking away an imaging capability, because there's multitudes of different imaging capabilities these systems have, or imaging keys that you can use to help them identify what they're looking at. Taking one of them away from them, to me, is not a good idea when you've already got a button there to do that. So I did that. It showed it on the screen where it was, and then after the amount of time counted down, it disappeared. And it's telling me you have correctly identified a fictional knife threat inside this X-ray image. Now, if this were to come through and it was a real gun, okay, it was a real gun, and I pushed that marked bag button, it would tell me you're not being tested at this time, which means you're actually seeing a potential real threat. So the system is designed to be intuitive with the operator to explain to them whether they've caught something, whether they've missed something, or if they're not even being tested during the process. And all of this information is stored by that user who's logged into the system. They have to be logged in individually, and then you can actually go in and see their performance based on a lot of different methods that they've built into the software or reports that can be downloaded from the system. Okay, so this is basically what TIP is. It's used mainly by aviation security elements. Most of your aviation industry uses them, and they'll require the operators to maintain a certain score. Now I'm going to tell you from experience, if you start somebody on this day one, their scores are going to suck, okay? It's just the nature of the beast. Now typically the starting scores will be from a 30 to 50% probability of detection, okay? The more they use it, the better those scores are going to get. Now again, the library, depending on how many images are in the library, over time, let's say 6 months to a year, they can learn all these images, and then it becomes where it's not as effective as it was anymore. Okay, so if they know all the guns, the knives, all the things that were in there, and they've seen them multiple times, it's time to upgrade your library. And a lot of these government agencies across the world are actually requiring whoever's operating their checkpoints to upgrade these TIP libraries. And again, this is where I have one of my biggest pet peeves, is the quality of the images that are being loaded in here and how the actual screeners are evaluated based on those different types of images they're seeing. That's another video, but we'll kind of go in here and show you what you can actually see in the menus. Now at a supervisor level of access, you can actually get in here and see all these menus. Now the operators do not have that ability to go into these menus, and they should not, because they're the ones that are being evaluated, so they don't need to be in here messing with anything, and they can do some damage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into it, and I'm going to go into TIP Threat Image Projection. And again, what you're seeing as far as the structure is going to be similar on no matter what manufacturer you go to, okay, especially when you get into the TIP. So we go inside this, so it's going to break down several categories for you in regards to the menus that you can go in and actually adjust how this actually presents things to your operators. You can do a lot of tweaks inside here, so if you haven't done this, you need to get familiar with this. And if you're a government agency and you haven't been in this and you haven't tweaked this, or you don't have some sort of program management involved in making sure that these settings are set to a conducive and level that's going to ensure that you're getting the best out of this software and providing training too, you got a problem. Because if you're using the default settings, you are absolutely doing nobody any favors, okay, at all. Because those default settings are actual crap. You need to go in there and tweak these and then adjust them. Now again, it has a lot of flexibility built into it that allows you, as a group, you can look at all your operators and say, as a whole, and say this is how they're performing. Now that's just kind of an overview, because the problem is if I got guys that were just hired and guys that have been here 10 years, there's going to be a massive difference in their ability to actually perform inside a tip. And right now it really doesn't give you a tool to separate them based on that aspect. How long or how well trained is the operator in regards to the tip library he's being presented. That option's not in there, and that's one of the problems with this software that needs to be fixed. Okay? So let's take a look at this. It's called Organized Threat Image Categories. So if you go in there, and this system right now only has 2 categories in it. It's got guns and knives. I haven't added the IEDs yet. I could add, the other category. But right now it's got a diversification range of how many guns and how many knives based on 100% the combination that they're going to get. So right now it's broken up 50-50. So you're going to get 50% guns, 50% knives. Now, let's say I'm in the UK. You don't have guns in the UK. There's very few guns there. It's not like here in the United States where everybody's got a gun, right? So I maybe don't want, or maybe I'm not as worried about guns as I am knives, because in the UK, if you want to get killed, you're probably going to get stabbed, okay? So that's like the stabbing place of the world. So maybe they're more worried about knives than they're actually guns, so they could change the percentage to have more knives shown to the operators than actual guns. Guns are pretty easy to pick out in an X-ray image, and 50% is kind of a lot. Knives are pretty difficult, because if you add clutter to it, that becomes more challenging for the operators to find. And that's another aspect of TIP that actually sucks. There is no process that looks at the bag and the amount of clutter or the complexity of the clutter that the image has been projected into. So if it's a bag with a little bit of stuff in it and there's a knife in there like this, bam, you can pick that out no problem. But if there's a whole bunch of crap in that bag and that same knife is in that position and there's other things around it, the chances of that operator finding it start reducing. So that complexity is not shown or evaluated any way, shape, or form in the current version of TIP software. And that needs to change, okay? Non-cluttered bags versus a highly cluttered bag make detection much more difficult, okay? So you have the ability to adjust this. And the other thing about this is if you are watching your guards as a whole, let's say you got 50 people working on your staff, you download one of the ports that shows everybody, and everybody's having problems with IEDs. You can actually increase the frequency or the percentage of IEDs to test them more, but again, it's got to be set up to where if they miss it, you give them as much time as possible on the screen that it's going to stay there, that they can look at it and learn from that process of, okay, that's what I missed, I now see it, I'm visually imprinting. Those default settings do not let you do that. And if you're using the default settings, or if you don't know what settings you're using, you're probably using the default settings, you are not doing your operators any favor. They're not getting any training value out of this, so you have to go in and change that. All right, so we understand now that we can change the diversification as far as what's there. Let's go into the other one, import threat library. You can actually upload new libraries based on if you purchase one. You can actually even make your own threats. So if you have your own training kits, you can run those items through individually. As long as you've got online recording on, you can go back and pull those images from online recording and move them over into your training libraries as an actual threat and put it in all the subcategories. I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but this is a menu. If you're a manager and you've got guys using this, you need to get into this menu and you need to learn it, okay? Backwards, forwards, sideways, and Sundays, and learn how to optimize it so you can enhance the detection capabilities of your guard force. A lot of capability in it, but most of the times the way it's set up and the way it's presented to them, it's not helping them, it's actually hurting them, okay? The next one, again, is an import feature. This one's called Threat Projection Settings. And this is how I'm going to give you kind of the ratios that you're going to actually have projections happen at the checkpoint. You can do a lot, you can do a little, but again, if a guy's going to be on the post for, let's say, 30 minutes, you at least want to get him 3 to 5, or more. It just depends on you. At least get him some projections so there can be a factor of evaluating as far as his performance. If you got it set at a huge range where there's only like one a day for all your shifts, that's not going to really be conducive to getting good data back to let you know what's going on. Now, you don't want it every bag like I got it going right now. So again, there's a lot of different ways you can set that, and it should be standardized so you know what you're getting, okay? That one is kind of pretty self-explanatory. We're going to go down to this one called Decision Time Settings. Now, initially, if you go in here and it's defaulted, it's going to be set for 3 seconds. No. I mean, I don't care how fast you want the line to go. There's a certain amount of time it takes, depending on the amount of clutter that's in a bag, for a person to screen it. And 3 seconds is kind of bullshit, okay? I'm sorry, all right? And unless they hit another button, if they hit one of their P1 keys or P2, and again, P3 is typically set for marked bag. If they hit one of their other imaging keys, which they should be doing, it does give them additional time. And that one is right here, additional time that will give them if they hit one of the buttons. So I typically set this to around 15 seconds. You can set it to 10 or whatever. But if somebody's just starting off and you put them at 3 seconds, that guy's screwed, okay? You are absolutely just wailing on this guy, and his score is going to suck, okay? Faster is not necessarily better, all right? Faster is not better, especially when you're talking about X-ray interpretation. So I would increase this from the 3 seconds to a little bit longer time. Now, the more efficient your guard force is, or the more well-trained, you can actually lower this time. But again, 3 seconds is kind of an extreme. And then you always want to give them additional time, either 10 to 15 seconds, that if they push a key, they can actually look at it and make a decision on what they're seeing. If it's a complex image, it takes time. Can't be done in 3 seconds, all right? So you definitely want to change those. Reports and data download. When you go into this one, there's actually 5 different reports that you can download from the system, and each one of those reports should be detailed in your user's manual. You got individual screener performance reports, you've got group reports, you've got log-on reports, you got the category reports, the type of things that they're missing. Now again, this is kind of okay, but it could be made much better. And again, when I talked about individuals who have a high level of skill or experience versus somebody low level, there's no discrimination in this software or how it's set up to compare the difference between the two, okay? And there needs to be. All right, so we'll go into, and I think I want to look at report 2, I believe, and we're going to go with the default user. We're going to execute that, and it'll pull it up on the screen. And I got no data. I do have data, okay, down here at the bottom. All right, number of bags, 3. Number of tips, that's projections, was 3. Number of hits, that means I detected it, was 2. Number of misses is 1. Probability of detection, 67%. So I had a 67% detection rate because I got 3 tip images. I got 2 out of 3. This right here is probability of false alarm, so it tracks that. This is called the D prime. That's a number that's used to evaluate all the factors. Probability of detection, false alarm rate, the time in which they make a decision is all evaluated this. And this is typically what's going to be used, this D prime, to kind of give an overall evaluation of that screener. So again, it's an okay software, but it definitely can be made better and enhanced by adding more capabilities to it to track people based on their skill set. And also when you start getting into the tip images, that's a whole nother nightmare. So, I mean, some images are easy, some orientations are easy, some orientations are really tough. And this system does not take that into account when it's evaluating screener performance. And that's another aspect that needs to change on all these tip software systems. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this. I know it was a lot. If you want to learn more about tip, get the manual for the system and get in there and actually read it. And then I'll actually go in there and start playing with it when you get into the menus, okay? I cannot stress this enough, especially if you're a manager operating this. If you're a government guy and you are running the program and you don't know this left, right, sideways to Sunday, you're wrong, brother. You're seriously wrong. You got to know this. A lot of capabilities, a lot of methods to help enhance your guys operating these machines to make them better at detecting threats. All right, hope you enjoyed it. See you.